Hey everyone, welcome back to It Makes Sense, the podcast where we explore how the Christian worldview makes the most sense of life and the universe. Today, we're diving into a huge topic, one that a lot of people wrestle with but rarely talk about honestly. Proof versus evidence when it comes to God. Can anyone prove God's existence? Can anyone prove he doesn't? What does faith actually mean? And where does each worldview really lead? We're going to break all of that down today, intellectually, biblically, and honestly. All right, let's roll the intro. All right, welcome back to It Makes Sense. If you're a young adult listening right now, there's a good chance you've already had conversations about God, science, atheism, meaning, morality, purpose, and all of that. And if you haven't, trust me, you will. So today, I want to give you a framework that will help you think clearly and confidently about one of the biggest debates in the world. Do we have proof or do we have evidence? And does faith fill the gaps in a reasonable way or in a blind way? One of the most important things we can admit without fear is this: no one can prove God exists. And, ironically, no one can prove he doesn't. And that's not a weakness, that's just a reality. Proof is a mathematical concept. It means airtight, undeniable, and universal certainty. But God isn't the kind of being you can put in a test tube or under a microscope. Scripture says in John 4:24, God is spirit. It also says in John 1:18, no one has ever seen God. He's not observable in the same way material objects are. Both atheists also can't prove God doesn't exist. To prove a universal negative, you would need all knowledge in all places, across all of reality, and at all times. And ironically, that level of knowledge would make you God. So the playing field is level. Both sides have limits. Both sides need faith. The question is, whose faith makes more sense of the world we actually live in? As Christians, we don't have to pretend we have absolute mathematical certainty. The Bible never demands that. What Scripture calls us to is faith grounded in evidence, conviction grounded in reason, and trust grounded in God's revelation. Not blind faith, not emotional faith, not close your eyes and hope, but faith that honors the evidence God gives us. Being honest about that doesn't make Christianity weaker. It actually makes us more credible. Atheism is often presented as the facts and science worldview, but atheism also requires massive faith. Without God, an atheist must believe on faith that nothing produced everything, non-living matter produced consciousness, morals are just personal feelings, meaning is an illusion, human value is invented, love is just a chemical response, justice has no ultimate standard, and death ends everything. None of that can be proven. All of that is taken by faith. So again, the question isn't whether you have faith. The question is what worldview your faith is placed in. Let's talk evidence, not proof, evidence. The Bible encourages us to use it. The heavens declare the glory of God, it says in Psalm 19:1. Romans 1:20 says his invisible attributes are clearly seen. In Acts 17, Paul reasoned with skeptics in Athens. Christianity gives us real, solid reasons to believe. Here are four powerful evidences. Evidence number one, the universe had a beginning. This is the cosmological argument. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Genesis 1:1 fits perfectly. Evidence two, objective morality. We instinctively know good and evil are real. That doesn't come from biology alone. Romans 2:15 says God wrote his law on our hearts. Evidence number three, human consciousness, self-awareness, reason, morality, creativity. None of this comes from random material processes. It lines up with being made in God's image, and we see that in Genesis 1:27. And evidence number four, the resurrection. Christianity stands or falls right here. And historically, the resurrection of Jesus is one of the most well-supported events in ancient history. Again, not proof, but overwhelming, consistent evidence. And when I say that it's one of the most well-supported, that's not only by Christian historians, but also non-Christian historians. Now let's talk about destination. Christian faith, built on evidence and centered on Christ, leads us to the following: a living God, a loving God, an all-powerful God, an all-knowing God, and an ever-present God. That's where we get the words like omniscient or omnipresent or omnipotent from. Our faith leads to meaning. It leads to morality, purpose. It gives us identity and hope and relationship and destiny. Faith leads us to someone who knows our name. Now, let's be fair. An atheist will hear all of this and say, but I do believe in meaning. I do believe in morality. I do believe people have dignity. And you know what? They're absolutely right. Most atheists do live as if morality, purpose, dignity, and love are real and meaningful. So why do I say their worldview leads to meaninglessness? Well, they don't live out the logical conclusion of the worldview, first of all. If atheism is true, right and wrong aren't real, love is chemical, dignity is invented, purpose is imaginary, and justice is preference. But no atheist actually lives that way, because no human can live that way. We all treat morality, purpose, and value as objective, even if our worldview can't justify them. The second thing, they borrow from the Christian worldview without realizing it. They want justice because God is just. They want meaning because God made them with purpose. They treat humans as valuable because humans bear God's image. They love deeply because God is love. You can reject the artist but still carry his signature. You can deny the potter but still bear his fingerprints. Atheists aren't hypocrites. They're human. They're image bearers, and they can't escape that reality. So here's where we land. You can't avoid faith, but you can choose which direction your faith points. Atheism leads to an empty, silent, self-contained universe where nothing ultimately matters. Christianity leads to a God who loves you, created you, pursues you, and calls you into relationship. You don't need proof. You need evidence and the courage to follow where the evidence leads. And if you follow it honestly, consistently, and humbly, it will lead you to Christ. All right, that's it for today's episode of It Makes Sense. I hope this challenged you, encouraged you, and gave you something solid to think about. Before you head out, though, let me do a little housekeeping here. If this episode helped you, please hit the like button. It really does help more young adults find this content. Share this episode with a friend who's wrestling with faith, worldview, or purpose. You never know how God might use it. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and drop a comment or a review and let me know what stood out, what challenged you, or what topics you want to hear next. And one more thing, I also write regularly on Substack. If you want to stay up to date on my latest thoughts, reflections, and longer form writing, search and subscribe at dannytippett.substack.com. Tippett spelled Tippit, same backwards as forwards. Yes, that is a palindrome. Thanks for listening. Thanks for caring about truth. And thanks for taking your faith seriously in a world that rarely does. Until next time, keep seeking, keep thinking, and keep leaning into the truth. God bless.